Hey guys, Kai here, and in today's video, we'll be going over all of the changes that will be made in patch 15.4. Now, these changes, again, they were provided directly to creators to help create content for the community in Mortdog's absence via Riot Games to help better inform the community about new changes. But one thing I want to mention in this rundown that I forgot to mention in the last one, which was on 15.2, which is that we do not actually get the full final draft. Timeline-wise, just for full clarity, is that we get the notes about 24 hours ahead of time before it is released to the public and anybody could access the notes. So during that 24-hour time frame though, very rarely there will be some last minute minute changes that might happen that may not actually be covered in today's video because we actually didn't receive them. So I highly encourage you to make sure that you, while watching this video, perhaps cross-reference it with the original patch notes just to make sure you're not missing out on anything. And in case you have not been here from a previous rundown, I have taken the changes and formatted them for visual clarity in Mortdog's original style. That way, if you're watching me or my channel for the first time, this shouldn't feel too different from previous rundowns you may have seen from previous sets. And with all of that finally out of the way, let's now dive into this patch because it is honestly incredibly large. This slideshow, by the way, the deck took me like 3 hours. It's actually absurd. But let's now talk about the changes. First off, systems wise, champion targeting. At combat start, ranged champions now properly respect tank targeting tiebreakers. So in case you do not notice this, sometimes you'll have an AD melee carry that is up in your front row alongside a tank, and then for some reason the opponent's carry is immediately targeting your melee carry, despite the fact that the new system changes should have allowed the adjacent tank to be targeted first. So this was apparently unintended. I just thought it was like a probability thing, like it was a 90% chance it hits the tank and 10% chance it hits your like melee carry, but it turns out they always want you to be hitting the tank no matter what. And then if, you know, again, assuming that they're adjacent to each other. So it seems that this was something that Riot did not like, and they finally are able to tackle on this problem because now they have updated the ranged champions to target melee champions before they move, which should overall prevent ranged champions from targeting a rapping fighter that would normally be protected by their adjacent tank. Great change, glad that it's there, and honestly, it was very confusing for a while, and a lot of us were so confused, so glad to see that that is in there. Next up, champion roles. This is a very big one actually. Fighters. They will no longer gain 8 to 20% omnivamp per stage and now will instead gain 5 to 30% attack speed per stage. So if you want to know the actual numbers, from stage 2 they will get 5%, stage 3 10%, stage 4 20%, and then stage 5 onwards is 30% attack speed. And just to be clear, some fighters based attack speeds have been modified to compensate. And on top of this change as well, assassins are no longer in the game. All assassins have had their roles changed to fighter, and the assassin trait itself is no longer, but it is hinted that they may use it in future sets if the time is right. So that is a very big change. So units like Yasuo, for example, who was arbitrarily labeled an assassin and was for some reason not having built-in omnivamp, will now have been swapped to the fighter role, but will now gain scaling attack speed because now fighters get scaling attack speed. So I'm glad that that change is in there. I remember Wigwag, who is also like a top challenger player, he had mentioned at the very beginning of the set being like, hey, holy crap, like why do some champions have the assassin tag and some have fighters? It seems so arbitrary that some need omnivamp and some don't. It seems very confusing and honestly super just all over the place. So glad to see that this change is here because it really does help simplify everything together. And again, there was no need to have this assassin trait at all, and it just felt so arbitrary. But that being said, there are a bunch of role stat changes that have been made. And again, these are all net neutral adjustments. So I'll leave them on screen for just a second. But honestly, you shouldn't really take this too much because overall, this shouldn't really change anything. Everything should still feel roughly the same as to what it was before. It's just now you're just implementing the new fighting changes for the classes. The only thing to note though is that Yone is also getting a little bit of resistances. That's just because he really did rely on the omnivamp for making sure that he could like utilize his kit to the fullest. So they're buffing that just a tiny bit, but overall not a very big change. Another big change actually though, talking to the systems changes, is the prismatic orbs. If you've been on TFT Twitter at all, you will know that challenger players have been bitching about prismatic orbs and the wide spectrum of possible values. Well, crazy enough, Riot said, well, here you go. Now the prismatic orbs will have even a wider spectrum of possible values. We're not listening to you guys. Psych. Now the orbs though, every player will get the same prismatic orb output. So no matter who you are in the game, if you see a prismatic orb, everybody else is going to get the exact same thing. Again, just as a reminder as well, these can only be seen on stages 3 and 4, and they appear less than 4% of games, so they appear very, very little. And finally, the prismatic orbs, by the way, the outputs have changed as well. There is a brand new loot table. I want to go over this and more specifically point out something very crucial. Riot is very aware that artifacts, radiant items are a problem. They are a huge problem. And this loot table change, and as long as some other changes you'll see down the line, are really tackling the artifact and radiant item problem because they are, one, way too common, and two, way too strong. So I'm glad we're seeing a bunch of these changes here and making them a bit more elusive because they're not supposed to be these things that are so common that you see in basically, if you think about it, like almost every single game. So now the new loot table, I've actually highlighted in orange the artifact changes and highlighted in blue the radiant items. And as you can see, if you add up the percentages, and I'm going off a bit of a limb here because if you see the 1%, it says a tiny present and a fishy reward. They didn't specify what those were, but my guess is that it's probably a triple mittens and a triple fish bones. So that, coupled with the fact that if you add up all the percentages, it adds up to exactly 25%. I'm pretty sure I'm right. But if you see a prismatic orb, it means there is a 25% chance it's going to have an artifact or a radiant item in there. And actually, crazy enough, one of those radiant items is going to be a radiant thief's glove instead of a, I think that's spelled wrong, by the way. It's IE, not EI. Excuse me. Sorry about that. But a radiant thief's glove. That means you don't actually even get to choose a radiant item. The radiant item chooses you, aka it's a thief's glove. The only time is there only a 5% chance you can get a radiant lucky chest, which would actually be a real radiant item that you could choose from. So I'm glad to see that this system is being implemented because again, radiant items and artifacts, this patch especially, they felt so unfun to play against, and they enabled so many different broken lines, and sometimes it just felt like you hit it or you didn't. So I'm really glad that they are addressing this problem. The rest of the loot table is going to be a lot of gold, a lot of anvils, a lot of components and such as that. So really welcome change. Another thing to note is that continuing on the trend of addressing the artifact problem is that with gold orbs, they are now getting completely rid of the chance to see an artifact anvil from a gold orb. And instead, they have actually bumped up the champion duplicator reward and the 2x5 cost reward by 2.5% to compensate for the table. So now artifact anvils are no longer possible from gold orbs. Another thing to note, to reduce artifacts even further, for loot sub, the artifact anvil reward is now replaced with one completed item anvil and a salvager, which if you don't remember from previous patches, or rather, excuse me, previous sets of set 14, it is a consumable used to break apart items, which is super cool. I actually really like the salvager. I'm glad to see that it's making a return. So I think that it's really fun, but also expect to see less artifacts in loot sub, which is going to be super great. I love that they added that. Finally, PvE rounds, small change, but stage 2-7 Krugs, their base AD has been nerfed a little bit, and Crab Brave stage 5+ has also been nerfed a little bit. The damage per jump has been reduced from 100 to 90. I think this is just because of the mana changes. I believe they stated the rationale why. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I believe it's because the mana changes makes it a little bit harder to kill these things, because now that when you get hit by damage, you don't actually get mana. So they have made these a little bit easier to defeat, which I think is good. For some reason, I feel like Crab Brave is way harder to beat compared to previous sets. So I'm glad that this has been implemented. Lastly, large changes side, a bouncing Zac balloon. They straight up didn't elaborate what this was. They straight up said, large changes like a Zac balloon, that's it. If I had to guess, it's probably the beach ball portal. Probably something to do with that. That's my one guess, but I actually have no idea what the hell's going on over there. But next one, going over to the traits. Crystal Gambit 3, they have buffed this again. The base gems per loss has been buffed again up to 15, but the stage 4 multiplier has been decreased once again from 1.85 down to 1.65. Heavyweight, the 6-piece treat is getting 6-piece treat? Excuse me. 6-piece trait. I had a 6-piece chicken treat earlier from McDonald's, but maybe that's why. Freudian slip. Heavyweight, the 6-piece has been buffed to 65% instead of 60%, so maybe we'll see a little bit more of vertical heavyweight. I believe they buffed this last time too, from like 50 something in the previous patch, so they just keep cranking this number up, so eventually it should be playable to some degree. Luchadors, they no longer grant immunity and untargetability before jumping, which is pretty interesting. Champions will also heal before the damage is dealt, allowing them to survive if they would out heal the damage, and champions no longer run backwards before leaping, which is a very welcome change, because sometimes your frontliner was a luchador and then it would jump backwards, and then it would kind of lure the opponent's carry a little bit forward, and then they'll start hitting your carry, and you're just like, well, what's the point of having a frontline, right? So glad that that is there. And actually the heal has been buffed as well from 15 to 35 to 25 to 50% 4 luchadors. And actually, I should highlight the 25 in green as well. So very interesting change to the luchador trait itself. Mighty Mech 7 has been buffed as well, 850 up to 950 for the mech's base health. Small change, but I think it is welcome. I think the 7 piece is very fun to play, but very difficult to get to, and has a lot of setup that is very difficult to achieve. One of which is included trying to hit double mech pilot for your fruit, and that is something that is just so hard to achieve, because I honestly wish they increased the percentage of that fruit specifically, because sometimes you can miss very, very hard, and that can feel a lot worse. Prodigy as well, receiving a huge nerf. Actually, the team-wide mana regen is going from 1 1 2 3 straight up to 1 at all levels. So the more you go up the Prodigy tree, the more you are only buffing the prodigies and not the whole board itself. So that is a very massive nerf in my opinion. I think that this is already enough to like knock prodigies down quite a bit. And I think near the tail end of this patch as well, we were starting to see prodigies fall off a little bit in favor compared to something like Mech Mentors as soon as Socialite Aatrox was found out. Next one up, Protectors, also getting nerfed as well, the 4 and the 6 piece. This is to, I believe, nerf 6 Protector in like the Kog'Maw reroll line. That's the only time I can ever really think of 6 Protectors really being a thing. But 4 is a huge one to nerf down as well because of Crew. The high end of Jin Crew reroll, one of the most meta reroll comps at the moment, is going to be nerfed down a little bit here because you do want to end on that board with 4 Protector. Finally, Wraith is also getting buffed. The Shadow Cadence is going to be buffed from 5 seconds down to 4 seconds. So hopefully with the with the Wraith buffs, we might see a little bit more Wraith play in action. Next up, Star Guardian. A lot of numbers changes are being shifted around here, and the individual bonuses, we'll quickly go over them. Rel's shield has been buffed up to 240 from 200. Syndra has been buffed up to 6 AP per second instead of 5. Zaya's every third attack has been buffed up from 60 to 75 per stage instead of 50 plus 60 per stage. Ari is unchanged. Nico is up by 2% for the healing and shielding compared to 10% before, so 12% now. Poppy will now get an 18% heal when she is at 40% HP, or rather all of the Star Guardian individual bonuses, right? Jinx, 7% attack speed, 20% on takedown, gets bumped up 8% and 25% on takedown, and Seraphine gets bumped up to 5% instead of 4% for the 80 attack speed, crit, and crit bonus. Now, if you're listening to all of this and thinking, why are they buffing every single fucking thing in this trait? Well, it's because of the second latter half of the Star Guardian changes, which are all of the nerfs that are coming into the bonuses per tier. You're seeing a 5% nerf for 3 Star Guardians in, 10% nerf for 4, 18% for 5, 26% for 6. These are very arbitrary numbers, by the way. 29% for 7, 32% for 8, 40% for 9, and 50% for 10. Holy fuck, mental math. So what does this all mean, right? Overall, the goal of all of these changes is to make Star Guardians more splashable throughout the game and making them stronger in the early game but weaker in the late game. So basically, what they're buffing all of the base stats, but they're nerfing all of the percentage multipliers. So the higher you go up into the vertical tree, the weaker of a multiplier you're going to get compared to previously. So basically, TLDR, Star Guardian openers are stronger, but their late game is now going to be weaker, which I think overall is, I think, a welcome change, but I don't know how much of a welcome change this is because Syndra is already one of the best AP openers already, partially because of how easy it is to play both the Star Guardian vertical and prodigies. So I'm a little curious to see how this shakes up overall, but overall, I think, hey, changes change. Moving on, units on the 1-cost side. Malphite getting a nerf. Base health 750 down to 700, and the resistance per item 20 down to 12. So this is a huge, actually massive nerf to Malphite overall. And quite honestly, I think I saw Weijin even talk about this on stream, but he thought that his initial impression was this might actually just completely gut Crew altogether because Malphite is such a staple in the line, and you really do need to have that beefy frontliner at the beginning to really be able to streak in the early game to preserve your HP so that you can actually play into the later half of the game and be able to bleed out into your third or fourths. That's typically the way that Crew goes. Sometimes you can win out if you super high roll, but generally speaking, you kind of want that beefer in the front line, and these nerfs really hit hard. Sivir, though, on the other hand, is going to get a bit of a buff, partially to compensate for the Crew nerfs, but also because Sivir herself is just such a terrible unit. The base AD will be buffed up by 5, and mana will be buffed by reducing the total mana, the cost cast by 10. Cost. What am I, fucking European? The cost to spell. Sorry, tangent. Anyways, moving on. Units on the 2-cost side. Spell damage for Janna is actually getting buffed up all across the board. I think that's fair. She has not been a staple anywhere. She has just felt super mid. Even in Kog'Maw reroll, where it's probably the most common you'll see her being rerolled. It's not even like you want to. It's more like you kind of had to because you just naturaled so many copies. So we're seeing 110, 165, 260, bumped up to 130, 195, and 310. Kai'Sa, on the other hand, getting a big nerf on every single star level, 36, 54, and 84 from 38, 57, and 90. So overall, it's only like 2 to 3 AD, actually 6 at the 3-star, but it is a nerf, and Kai'Sa has honestly been so dominating, and I think they didn't want to actually get rid of Kai'Sa 3 just being an actual carry. They just want to make it just slightly harder for you to get over that hurdle to really make sure that once you get to Kai'Sa and get to that large end game, that you got there because you scaled so hard getting into the late game. Next one, Vi as well, also getting a bit of a buff. Honestly, well needed. I don't think Vi is anybody's favorite tank throughout the mid game. So we're seeing a small ability heal buff, buffed up to 230, 280, and 330 for the 1, 2, and 3-star respectively. On the 3-cost side, Malzahar getting a buff as well. 30 mana to cast instead of 35, which is honestly quite a big buff considering the fact that Wraith is getting buffed, Malzahar is getting buffed. We might see a little bit of Malzahar reroll over in the future. Smolder also getting buffed back up as well, 225, 340, and 540 AD compared to 215, 325, and 515 as before. Very minor nudge, I think, in my opinion, for Smolder. I think Smolder has already been a unit that we just don't see played ever. So for this tiny of a nerf, or excuse me, of a buff, is it really enough to push him into the meta? Personally, I'm a little skeptical, but we'll see how things will shake up. Senna also, some very interesting stuff has been taking place over on Senna's side. Her core gameplay logic has been rewritten. Basically, she's more responsive in ending her spell if there are no valid targets within her beam, and she's actually now able to attack and move significantly earlier after the spell ends. Because sometimes, in case you didn't realize, sometimes Senna would cast her spell and then the target dies, and then she kind of like awkwardly stood there while she's like resetting her like animation, and then she would keep going. So this is just to make her feel a bit more fluid, but this is overall a buff. So they are gonna nerf her spell damage just a tiny bit to compensate, just to try and keep things level. But overall, this should feel like Senna is not really changed too much. But again, her spell damage is getting nerfed slightly a bit, 360, 540, and 875 AD compared to 385, 580, and 960 as before. So actually a very large 2-star nerf in my opinion. But moving over, another bit for the 3-cost side, Ziggs is also getting buffed as well. Thank God no one's playing this fucking unit ever. And honestly, after the Malphite nerfs, I'm a little hesitant to say if we'll even see Ziggs unless there's some sort of strategist line. But I find that a little unlikely. But with Janna buffs and Ziggs buffs, that might potentially be a thing. Ziggs getting buffed at all star levels, 230, 345, and 550 AP from 200, 300, 465. So again, quite a bump up in the AP ratios. Next up, Udyr as well. Healing is getting gutted a little bit, 130 down to 130, 170, and 220. This is definitely welcome just because Udyr, with the correct item setup, in case you are not aware, Gargoyles, Titans, and Sterax, has been an absolute menace when it comes to playing 6 duelists. So the 6 duelist line, Colossal Udyr, is getting nerfed a little bit harder. Moving on to the 4-cost, Cassante is going to be seeing a 5% durability nerf when it comes to the 1-star and 2-star version. Leona is also going to be seeing a slight nerf as well, resist steal per potential going from 1.5 down to 1, which is actually quite large if you think about it. That's a 33% nerf. I don't know how much that actually plays into how strong Leona is as a unit, but this nerfs Battle Academia Leona quite a bit. So your Prodigy Yumis, potentially 7 Battle Academia if you're playing into like Caitlyn Chase, stuff like that. Finally, Poppy, with the most interesting changes in my opinion for the 4-cost side, her shield is now going to scale less based off AP, but now with the introduction of a max HP percentage ratio. So that's really interesting to me because 6 heavyweight is getting buffed. Poppy is going to get buffed in terms of the way that her shield works because it scales off her HP, and best defense Poppy, which does more damage based off her shield, which scales off HP, sounds kind of spicy to me. So who knows, maybe you're still better off playing in the Vertical Star Guardian trait, and that's okay. But I really think that there might be some spicy stuff going down with like some Crown Guard, Sterax, best defense, 6 heavyweight stuff with Poppy. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out. Her primary damage, by the way, is also not going to scale off HP anymore, but instead will purely scale off of AD, which we see a bump in those numbers to compensate. Same with her secondary damage as well, which will again bump up the AD ratios, but taking away the HP ratio overall. So she'll be doing a little bit less damage because of her spell, because of the way that naturally works, but maybe with best defense, like who knows. I'm very curious. Let me know if you test it out, because I personally will definitely be trying it as soon as the patch launches. Samira, her single target damage is also getting a buff as well on the 1-star, 2-star side. I think that's perfectly acceptable. Who the fuck is playing Samira? And quite honestly, there's been a little bit of debate if like Xayah 2 is better than Samira 2. I mean, it's not, but like it's close, you know? So like that's not great. So glad to see that this 4 cost is getting a little bit of love. Yuumi is also seeing a bit of a nerf as well. 24, 36, 150 AP instead of 28, 42, and 150. So that is definitely going to hurt the Yuumi Prodigy comp quite a bit. And especially again with the Prodigy changes and with the Leona Battle Academia changes, Prodigy Yuumi definitely getting hit quite a bit this next patch. Don't know how playable it's really going to be, but that's what we said the last time they nerfed Prodigies, and then it was still playable, so who knows. Mentor Mech as well, specifically for Rise, is also going to be seeing a nerf for the Mentor variation. We're going to see the AP go down for his Mentor spell damage to 770 and 1155 from 800, 1200. And his geyser damage is also going to be nerfed slightly a bit, going from 5075 450 down to 4565. So that is again specifically the target for Mentor Rise. That is because I believe what they said in the patch notes is that they predicted that Rise Mech Mentor would be too strong already, so they really wanted to gut him just a tiny bit. Not gut, nerf him just a tiny bit, just to really make sure he stays within line. So this is more of like a preliminary nerf because they're very worried about what might happen. So glad to see that that is being implemented. On the 5 cost side, Twisted Fate is also going to get changed a little bit in the way that he works now. So he still works the exact same, his spell works the exact same with the way that his marks works and the way that they explode, but sometimes when you're playing TF, it can feel kind of bad where you mark a bunch of units, but then you don't actually get to detonate the marks and do that bonus damage, and that can feel really bad and feel off the mark. So Jesus Christ. The spell damage has been buffed up itself. So the spell itself will hit more, but it won't be as reliant on actually detonating the marks. So that is what you really want to be seeing here. And honestly, that is just so that if TF dies too early in the fight, you don't feel like you're just down a whole unit. Zyra is also getting some changes as well. So basically, the TLDR is that her melee plant is actually going to be even less effective, and they want to make Zyra a bit more effective as being a just damage dealer. So we're seeing her spell damage getting buffed up here from 8120 up to 9135 for the 1 and 2 star, and her melee plant HP is getting nerfed even more, down to 800 HP actually from 1200, which is quite a lot. That's a 400 HP nerf, like 33%. Quite a lot, to say the least. And actually, her utility is also getting nerfed as well, down to 10% attack speed and 25 or plus 25/40% of her AP, depending on the 1-star, 2-star version that you have. But her utility is less, her melee version of her is less, so, or rather the tank plant in the front. So now we really might start seeing like Zyra plant backline now, and itemizing Zyra. That could potentially be a thing. So keep your eyes out for that one. Over on the augment side, the silver 9000 volts cannon is getting a slight buff. All there is to it, and honestly, well deserved. That augments suck dick. Augments on the gold side. Can I say that? I can say that. That's my channel. Fuck you. Gold side, give him the chair. Dr. Mundo is getting a buff as well. Going from increase the range to 3 to 4, and the mana down from 0 to 40, so he can cast more and he can hit further away. Cool to see how that works out, because so far I've not seen anybody take this augment literally ever. Space Camp. Whenever you upgrade a crew champion, gain a random 1 to 2 cost champion will now be changed to a random 1 or 3 cost. So now, if you take Space Camp, you can actually get Ziggs as well. So that is very interesting to say the least. It really does want you to play into the vertical crew. And with the, Ziggs changes and the Jaina changes, but with the Malphite nerfs, maybe we'll see it. Who knows? Teachers Council no longer increases the bonuses from mentors by 10%. You'll still be able to play any number of mentors that you want, but I mean, alright. And then the council champion that it actually provides is now Kobuko instead of Udyr, which is definitely a bit of a nerf. Well, depends on who you ask. But next one, Twilight Assault Shen's hero augment, also seeing a bit of a buff as well. Gonna be casting a little bit more and gonna be attacking a little bit faster. So who knows, again, maybe we'll see a little bit more play of this one, but I'm definitely a skeptic to say the least. Prismatic side, Mess Hall, now excluded from 2-1. Thank fucking God. Prismatic pipeline has been disabled. Thank fucking God. Okay, not actually. That augment was fine, but they added the prismatic orb changes, so that's the only reason why they disabled it. So honestly, a little sad to see it go. I don't think it was that bad of an augment. Giant and Mighty has been re-enabled. So if you don't remember this is a prismatic where your team gets, oh no shit, it says prismatic at the top. Your team gets larger, gaining 300 HP and plus 4% max HP. Tiny but Deadly has also been re-enabled as well at Prismatic Combat. Your team is now 50% smaller, which does absolutely fucking nothing, but moves and attacks 30% faster. And that's about it. It might actually be pretty strong though with the fighter changes, so I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out. Radiant Relics and Radiant Fracture, by the way, are now exclusive. You cannot get both of them anymore, which good. Too much power in double Radiant carries, for sure. Next, a lot of changes on the craftable items and actually items in general. We have a lot to cover. Archangels is going to be seeing a buff actually for the base AP, but overall nerf for how much it scales. So stronger early, but it will scale a little bit worse than it did previously before. Blue buff is also going to be getting its mana regen actually nerfed back down to 5, but now you gain 10% additional AD and AP from all sources. So this is supposed to try to get you to be happy about slamming blue buff plus Deathblade or blue buff plus Rabadons. That's kind of like the intent. Kind of weird, like the whole double component things, but I guess. Giant Slayer, the baseline damage amp is getting buffed up to 15%. Kraken's Fury, this is a very big change, by the way. Pay attention. The AD has been nerfed by 10%. That's not the important part. Sorry. Now pay attention. The attacks grant 3% stacking AD up to 20 attacks. It does not stack infinitely like before. You get up to 50, 60 stacks. No longer the dream. Stays up to 20. And after 20 stacks or 60 AD, you gain 40% attack speed now. You get a bunch of attack speed after hitting the max stacks. So this is just to make sure that I also think that like Deathblade was just like not an attractive item anymore because Kraken would ramp up so incredibly high. So this is definitely going to be a huge nerf and change to units like Ashe, who really like getting that like insane Giga Kraken stacks to no longer having like infinite stacking AD. So this is a very large change to say the least. Gnasher's Tooth is also getting a very large change as well. We're getting less AP out of it, so 10 less AP, no more mana regen from the like base stats itself, and it actually provides crit chance now up to 20%. And the reason why they got rid of the mana regen was because now attacks grant 2 bonus mana, but it's increased to 4 if they critically strike. So if you do the math, if you have JG Strikers Gnashers, that is 100% crit, meaning that if you have that exact build, your AP champ will actually crit on every auto and then gain 6 mana per auto, which is more than a Shojin, which only gives 5. So very, very interesting change here to say the least. Quicksilver is also getting a base attack speed nerfed down to 10%, but now it grants 3% stacking attack speed per second. So this is very, in my head, specifically for a unit like Volibear, who actually really likes having stacking attack speed, but admittedly also would prefer to not get CC'd if possible. And this is a really good change to implement because now with Luchadors not getting the invulnerability anymore, this I think, or when they leap, right? Now with the granting stacking attack speed, this is kind of like a Ginsu's, but slightly worse in terms of stacking, but you get the CC immunity, which could be enough to be like, okay, maybe I do want to have Quicksilver on my Volibear, but who knows, maybe 3% is too low and actually you want like 4%. We'll see how things play out, but am I building Quicksilver now? Maybe if I'm playing around Volibear, but that's about it. Red buff also getting an attack speed buff by 5%. Items on the Radiant side, a lot of changes as well. Radiant Archangels is getting nerfed altogether. The base AP and the AP per second is just too strong all across the board, so that's just getting nerfed all around. Radiant Blue buff also getting nerfed as well, down to 30 AD and AP, which is crazy because it used to give 60 if you remember back during the first patch. But now you gain 20% additional AD and AP from all sources, so okay, fuck me, maybe that's why. Radiant Kraken's Fury also getting a nerf as well, down to 20 AD, but now the attacks grant 6% stacking AD up to 20 attacks, and after 20 gain 80% attack speed. So again, no more infinite cap, but it has a max cap at 20 and then big burst of attack speed. Radiant Giant Slayer, you're also getting a 5% damage amp buff. Radiant Gnasher's Tooth is getting nerfed again for the AP and the mana regen from AP going down to 30 from 60, and mana regen going down to 0 from 4, but the critical strike chance is going up to 35%. So now the attacks grant 4 bonus mana increases to 8 if they critically strike, which is a fuck ton of mana. Radiant Quicksilver, again, same thing as well. It grants 6% stacking attack speed per second, so it's basically a Ginsu, but the base attack speed has been nerfed down to 25%. If you ask me, this Radiant Quicksilver sounds like fucking ass. It sounds like Ginsu, but slightly better. I don't think it's that good. Like, oh, there's CC immunity. I know. Does not sound that good to me though. But I don't know. Maybe it's broken. Who am I to say? Radiant Red buff also buffed by 5% for the attack speed. Items. This is actually very new. Combat start items have been updated for consistency. So now, combat start effects only trigger if the item is on the champion when combat starts. So if you put it on a little bit late after the fight has already started, you will not get that combat start effect. And the additional effects on the item will function though when they are placed mid-combat. So a couple examples are listed below. This might be the only ones that exist in the game, but I could be wrong. Quicksilver and the Radiant no longer grants immunity to crowd control if placed mid-combat, but you'll still gain the stacking attack speed. Vow and the Radiant counterpart will no longer grant the combat start mana if placed on a champion mid-combat. So you actually don't get that mana at the beginning, which is kind of crazy if you place it mid-combat. Crown Guard, this shouldn't surprise anybody. This has kind of always been the case. But placement combat, obviously, you don't get the shield, but you will get the AP. It's always been like that. No surprises there. Moving on, artifacts. Fishbones is getting a big nerf down 20% attack speed. I think you should just completely remove this item altogether. I think it is very, very unhealthy for the game overall because there is zero counterplay, except for building an Edge Knight on your backline carry, but you can't do that for one person in your lobby. Therefore, you should just get rid of it, in my opinion. I hate this item. I'm sorry. I fucking hate this item, but like, with a passion, in case that wasn't clear. But I think it should just be deleted. I think I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's so unfun to play against. Okay, I've said my piece. I am done with it. I don't know what this is. Flicker Blades also getting a nerf as well. We're getting less AD per 5 attacks and less AP per 5 attacks, going from 4% down to 3% for the AD and 4 AP instead of 5 for the AP. Triforce, we are seeing a buff to the item as well, which I think is honestly needed. I don't think anyone's like super happy getting Triforce. I think we're very like, okay, fine, I get Triforce, I guess. Health is getting buffed up to 300, and the stats is also getting buffed up all around the board to 30 from 25. Innovating Lockheed, the mana restore is getting nerfed down to 1%. I don't know why that's blue. That is definitely a nerf for sure. I don't know if that's enough to make it completely unviable, but they definitely got to nerf the crap out of this because the interaction with Garen is just fucking absurd. It's really just Garen is the only problem with this item. Lichbane is also getting a buff as well across all stages as well, going from 400, 480, 540 up to 450, 525, and 600. The only Lichbane holder I know off the top of my head is Kog'Maw, and he actually already likes Lichbane. So maybe we'll see just like Lichbane Kog'Maw being even more oppressive than it is already. But that being said, though, I'm not sure if he loves Lichbane over anything else, but he does like it. So it might not be as oppressive. I'm just curious to know if there's going to be like any other holder of Lichbane for the set. If you can think of any, let me know. Mana Zane, the mana restore is going to go from 120 down to 100, which is great because that item is just broken. And then Rapid Fire Cannon is actually getting a buff up to 75% attack speed from 66. Silvermere Dawn is getting an AD buff from 110 up to 120. You know, Silvermere Dawn is a good item. I think people have kind of unlocked like how to play around it too late into the patch. Maybe that's why this changes here. But you just do blue buff with Jace with Silvermere Dawn, and that thing is a crank. So we'll see. But there are blue buff nerfs, so who knows how things work out. But you get more AD per the bonuses. I'm a little sus. But speaking of being sus, the Trenchcoat, there's a Bug Fist, which now properly applies the Shadow Clone debuff to clones that split out. So that is good to see. New power-ups on the horizon as well. Lux gets a brand new power-up. Shine Brighter is a hero power-up. Every other cast, Lux spell explodes in a 2 hex radius and deals 10% more damage. Cool to see. This unit misses a lot though, so well, we'll see if it's played. But I know Lux reroll has been like a wet dream for a lot of folks, so hopefully we'll see it being played a little bit more often. Aatrox Mecha Blade. Aatrox gains attack speed equal to 4% of his maximum HP, and his attacks grant 5 bonus mana. With these 6 heavyweight buffs, Who knows? Maybe we'll see some carry Aatrox stuff going on. Maybe with like Lucian as well in the backline. That sounds kind of spicy. Kennen getting Supreme Surge as his hero augment. Or sorry, hero power up. Whenever an enemy is executed by a Supreme Cell, Kennen heals 15% of his max HP and gains 15 mana. Sounds super fucking fun. I'm not sure if it's going to be meta at all, but it does sound very fun. Maybe for his hero augments. Kabuko, Golden Gloves. When you gain interest, gain 1.5% AD per gold collected. Not sure how I feel about it, but with Hedge Fund Golden Gloves Kabuko, sounds super interesting. Sounds very fun. Katarina, Xayah, and Kalista, Veteran. They grant 4% damage amp, and their mentor upgrade is plus 35 and plus 35 AP. And I apologize, it's not written on here. I will update it though before I post this on Twitter. But yes, these units do become a mentor now. So Katarina, Xayah, and Kalista have the potential to become a mentor. That is going to be very interesting. It actually helps a lot because sometimes you miss on rides and it can feel really bad. And you know, having that in there just so you can get your 4 mentor bonus can feel pretty good. Senna and Lucian Drift Duo. Gain plus 3 mana regen. If both are 3-star, gain plus 1 mech. Very cool stuff to see. Rel, Starry Night. Rel gains 6% HP and 10 AP for every 1 cost you field 3-star units double count. So really wants you to really play into the 1 cost all across the board wet dream. Is that anyone's dream? I don't know. But maybe there's a board for this. Who knows? Really cool stuff. I like these new power-ups. I think they introduce a lot of potential new boards that we could be playing into. So this set, despite, you know, it's the 4th patch, and I remember the 4th patch in the last set feeling like, damn, like, kind of feels like all the comps have been figured out. There are so many comps and ways to experiment this set, so a lot of stuff to be looking forward to. That being said, though, speaking of power-ups, a lot of power-up changes. A lot. Adaptive skin resists are going up to 80. All-out AD gain is being buffed up, so we might see some all-out Cassante up to 45%. Attack Expert, the external AD boost is getting buffed up to 35% AD. Bestest Boy, Force, Smolder, and Kog'Maw both getting buffed up as well. Blade NATO getting buffed, Bludgeoner also getting buffed. Desperado is getting buffed and removed from Gnar, thank God, because who the fuck wants Desperado on Gnar? Not me. Double Strike is no longer offered on Udyr, thank God, we always just want Colossal. Fairy Tail damage is getting buffed as well up to 275, which is fine, I guess. The only Fairy Tail user that I think actually liked Fairy Tail was Kog'Maw when you missed Caretakers, but I don't know if this is enough to actually make it better than Caretakers. I really pressed to believe that it will be the tipping point. Final Boss is getting buffed up as well up to 4.5% amp. Final Ascent, Kale's hero, is going to get buffed up as well for the level 7 and the level 10. Don't think this really changes anything to my understanding because it's always just kind of been like, well, Kale's just out of the meta right now. So, like, I don't think this changes anything, to be honest. Vitalist is also getting buffed up as well, up to 3%. Gather Force is also getting buffed up as well, up to 45% mana. Hungry Hero also getting buffed up as well, getting extra AD per sacrifice and extra HP per sacrifice. Up another 1% AD and 25 HP per sac. Not sure if it does anything. I feel like there hasn't been a Hungry Hero comp that we have really found that we really like. And Hungry Hero, if you don't remember, this was Briar or Briar or Briars. I don't know how you pronounce it, but this one goes like this with the toes. That one, it was her thing with Eldritch, the summoning one, back in set 12. I want to say, I think it was set 12. Yeah, I think it was set 12. Yeah, Eldritch, that sounds like set 12. So that was like her whole like fruit slash like unique ability, but even during that set, I don't really remember players really playing around it unless they were trying to specifically like win out the lobby, and it was not very common that you would see that happening. So maybe we see some Hungry Hero stuff, but I'm really skeptical to think that this would actually change anything. Hyperactive getting buffed up as well, up to 100%. Ice Spinner getting nerfed down to 25%, which is Rise's thing. Glad to see that. Keen Eye is getting buffed up as well, so you get even more MR ignoring. Living Wall is getting buffed up as well, up to 1.5%. Magic damage reduction is also, or sorry, magic damage reduction is getting nerfed. Mage, oh my god, I cannot read. Mage, yes, the damage reduction on the second cast is getting buffed. So before you do 25% less damage, now you're doing 20% less damage. That's why it's green. Yes, I apologize. Holy fuck, I can't read. Magic Expert is also getting buffed up as well. External AP boost is getting buffed up by 5%. And Max Arcana, it will actually now track the remainder kills between rounds instead of resetting to 0, which is a huge fucking bug fix. I think that's a bug fix. Yeah, I think that's a bug fix. But overall, they're actually nerfing the base AP overall because I think now it's working as intended. So maybe we'll see some max Arcana, max attack stuff. So really crazy to see that the tracks remain your kills between rounds instead of resetting to 0. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I'm sitting here pretending I understand what that means. This specifically, I have no idea what the fuck this means. Tracks remain your kills between rounds instead of resetting to 0. Can someone explain that to me? Like, honestly, like in the comments. My reading comprehension is not amazing. I will admit it. We all have faults. Reading comprehension is mine. I was born a little stupid in the head. That's fine. It was probably dropped. Like, I don't know what that means. And like, I just copy and pasted the PDF they sent over and I just put it in there. So if someone can tell me what that means, I would be thankful. To me, that sounds... The vibe I'm getting from that sentence is, holy shit, that's a massive fuck up that they fixed up. That's brilliant. But are the vibes right? I don't know. Anyways, seems like they fixed it for all three of them, so that's fantastic. But if anyone could figure out what that means for me, that'd be great. Mech Pilot, moving on, before I keep embarrassing myself, has been getting a nerf a little bit down. So weird that they buffed up the 7 mighty mech stuff, but then they nerfed this stuff. Okay. Ordinary, also the attack speed is getting buffed up as well, up to 40 to 100% scaling. So I'm really pressed to think there's got to be an ordinary comp somewhere. If you don't know what this is, this power up lets you basically play built different for a unit, and then it gets a bunch of stats. I really believe there's an ordinary reroll comp somewhere. I truly believe it. I just don't know what it is yet. So I hope this is the patch we start to see ordinary being played somewhere, because I think it's a really cool power up. We just haven't really got to see the full extent of it. Next one, over 9,000. We're getting a bunch of changes here as well. The 80 AP attack speed gain is getting buffed up by 1%. Health gain is also getting buffed up by 10. Resist gains is buffed up by 8 instead of 4. But now it's no longer offered on Mundo, Malphite, Rammus, Rel, Shen, Udyr, and Vi. Which I think is a good thing. Pack Tactics also getting buffed up as well from 15 up to 18%. And Serious Slam, the bonus damage, can no longer critically strike or apply damage amp. And it will now deal damage based on the owner's basic attack damage rather than being affected by attack override. So this is actually quite a serious nerf overall. It cannot critically strike or apply damage amp and will be based off basic attack damage rather than... I'm just reading it again. I'm so sorry. But like, it's big. It's a big thing. It's a big change that's happening. But because they're doing that, now the base damage has been buffed up from 175 to 10%. But I think this should overall be net neutral, if I had to guess. I think that's their intent. If anything, it could be a slight nerf overall, but not entirely sure. Singularity can no longer critically strike or apply damage amp as well. Don't think anyone cares. I don't think anyone's clicking on Singularity. Socialite is getting a big nerf. HP down to 120 across the board for each unit. 2% less damage amp for each unit. And the round duration is actually down to 4. So instead of getting a 5-round rotation, and this is the biggest nerf, it's a 4 rotation. So you really got to be picky about the way you pick your hexes. But 4 is easier to track than 5. I feel like you go 1, 2, 3, 4. But with 5, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got to do some like zigzag stuff. Yeah. I don't think it's that hard. I think I just never bothered to learn. Soul Chipper, the MR reduction has been buffed up to 5, which is great. Stand alone, HP gain has been nerfed down from 35% to 30. Strong Spark has been buffed up as well, 9 to 11%. Not sure if that changes anything, but maybe it does for like Jarvan and Kennen, who knows. Surge 66 has been also buffed as well. The attack speed has been buffed up by 5%. And the unstoppable dash distance has been slightly shortened. If I had to guess, this means it doesn't go all the way to the 3rd row. Now it goes all the way to the 2nd row. AKA, if you are playing against somebody who is playing something like Colossal Udyr, and you have like an unstoppable Kabuko will now not go all the way into the the opponent's 3rd row, where it could hit things like Viego and Lee Sin, etc. I think. I don't know why they didn't specify how much is shortened. They just said slightly. 1 hex feels slight. I don't know. And then Tiny Terror, finally, is getting nerfed a little bit with the duration, so you get less dodgy time, but now you get a little bit more attack speed, which I don't think is a very fair trade-off, and overall, this feels like a nerf. In case you're wondering why there's a slight cut there, I actually choked on my water, and I had to redo the take. Anyways, moving on, bug fixes, last one. A lot of bug fixes have been implemented, but some pretty interesting stuff has come out the woodwork, so if you didn't know, you know, is the wave real? Are the units bugged? Well, turns out there are some slight bugs with the unit pool. Pandora's Bench and Recombobulation effects, Pocket Recombobulator, Augments no longer remove units from the pool under specific circumstances. How about that? Next up, fix a bug that causes power-up removers. I mean, okay, that honestly doesn't affect that many things. And I think that's been a bug for a while. I believe the Pandora's Bench bug has been around for quite a bit. But yeah, interesting. Who knows? Maybe some other things are bugged. Who knows? Next up, fix the bug that causes power-up removers to not properly work when combining their stacks, requiring an additional use. Ultra Stance also no longer loses its traits when Lee Sin would die in combat, and it would no longer sometimes persist its traits when Lee Sin was returned to the unit pool. Monster trainers correctly update their health at planning phase start instead of only when moved or at combat start. Thank God. 9,000 volts cannon has the proper 4-star scaling for its passive damage. Mana granted from the augment lift fuse now properly mana banks. Banks mana. I don't know why it's flipped like that. Fix the bug where some of the units with extended mana locks can benefit from mana regen during their mana lock. Sword of 7 has been removed from double up for some reason. Crown of Demacia now tracks the champion's role instead of position for determining the bonus to give, which is a crazy thing. Like, I didn't know that was a bug, but thank God that's fixed. Fix the bug where Crystal Gambit could not double down in Talker's Trials. Ziggs now properly triggers on-hit effects like Wit's End, so maybe we'll see some Wit's End Ziggs. Who knows? Radiant Lucky Item Chest now gives an item if the armory times out. Oh, I'm so glad they fixed that one. You know why I'm glad they fixed that one? Let me tell you why I'm so glad they fixed that one. Guess how they found out about that bug? Any guesses as to how that happened? It was me, man. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna take full credit for it, but quite literally, and actually, I'm gonna see if I can pull it up right now. But I remember I took a radiant item chest, and then I straight up here, I even have the tweet right here. I even took, oh, I still remember this game. I had a radiant lucky item chest, and then I didn't pick an item because I was looking at the stats for what radiant item to take. Now, before you fucking shove it in my face and be like, oh, look at this guy, he doesn't know what radiant item to take. You should have just clicked on it instead of looking at the stats. Fair. But also, like, come on, who's not looking at the stats, man? I ran out by like a second. So, yeah, anyways. I lost it. It felt really bad. But anyways, glad that got fixed because I was the unlucky soul that had to experience that one. And I definitely lost LP on that game. That was not very fun. I went 5th. I still remember. I'm still very salty about it. Icebender now properly chills for 20% instead of 30%, meaning right now on live, Icebender is actually stronger than it's supposed to be. Next up, they fixed an issue where shadow cloned versions of monster trainers would be counted as the strongest over the real copy. Weird. Fix a routing error in 100 push-ups that caused the first 6 rerolls to not count properly towards the total. And finally, Sus Trenchcoat now probably works with Zack's perfect form because for some reason it did not. But that is going to do it for all of the rundown. I hope this rundown was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This took a very long time. It took me like 3-4 hours to get the entirety of the deck together, not including like the filming time. So if this was helpful, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And I hope to see you guys all later. Again, the official notes will be in the description below. And if you want to see all the slides as PNGs, it'll all be on my Twitter. But that'll be it. Take care, guys. Happy climbing.